We are back on track.
Yes.
I am back from vacation, and now we're recording normal episodes again.
Yeah.
While I was on vacation, I tried to get some reading done. Barely got any.
Didn't seem like you would.
Yeah, because I brought that Yukio Mishima Acts of Worship short story collection I was reading, which should have only took me a couple days. And I was more than, I think I only had 1 or 2 stories left when I went on vacation. But I did so much stuff. I read a page a day if I was lucky. So when I got back, I finished that, and then I started Stephen King's The Long Walk.
Richard Bachman's The Long Walk.
Actually, I should say Richard Bachman because there's an introduction to the edition I have that it's Stephen King talking about the whole creation of Richard Bachman, and actually it was very interesting. It was about how he would use Richard, and he still does. If he wants to write a story that's a different voice than he feels his is, he writes it as Richard Bachman, so he's almost playing like a different character when he's writing. He says more gloomy and a little rougher around the edges kind of thing.
Which is saying something from reading some Stephen King books.
Exactly. I don't know. So far, I'm like 60% through it.
Oh, wow.
I only started reading it the other day, 2 days ago or a day ago or something. It's really, really good. I always forget how fucking readable early Stephen King was.
Yes.
Not saying he's not readable now. And by readable, I don't just mean like, oh, this is good or it's fast paced. I'm talking about like, it's almost like you're not reading.
Yeah.
Like you could read his work, but it's almost like watching a movie or just like, I could sit back and enjoy this. I don't have to think too hard. And it's not that he doesn't use like higher vocabulary or the language is not complex. Sometimes it's more complex, but it's just the fact that the way he writes is so goddamn smooth. And apparently this is the first novel he actually wrote at like 18.
Right? Yeah, isn't it?
The fucking dickhead. I'm sure he edited it, like went back and redid it. But still, I'm just like, come on, man. They get so fucking good. It's so tense. And I read it right. I read Shirley Jackson's The Lottery right before I read this, and it's like a similar concept.
Okay.
So I was just really getting into like, oh, here's some cool comparisons for, the short story that's one of the most famous ever. And then his fucking whole novel kind of set with that premise in mind. And then you're just like, God damn it, this is bleak. But you could see now, especially now, that it's like, I'm surprised this isn't a thing we are doing.
Well, that's just to make you feel better about your, your writing and everything like that. Those like first couple Richard Bachman stories were all stories that he wrote
as
before,
a teenager.
Yeah, before Carrie got published. Like, and again, like I'm sure, like you said, I'm sure he went back through and probably edited and polished some things up. But still, like, just even the story ideas.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people don't give Stephen King enough credit for, I feel, like the literary snobs, is the actual imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of people that snub Stephen King, they go, oh, he's, he doesn't write in a literary way, or his stories are just fluff, no literary merit. But I just want to be like, one of the hardest things to do in writing is to create an original story that hasn't been done, or have a take on something that's been done but is very original, like one that like this, The Long Walk. Like I said, it's kind of similar in the premise to The Lottery, but the way he does it and the actual acts that are going on in the book, it's just like, this shouldn't be a book that I would want to, like, people just walking hundreds of miles. That's it. It's just about a group of like 100 young, like, teenage boys sign up to walk hundreds and hundreds of miles, and if they lose, spoiler, if like they can't walk anymore, they get shot, they're dead.
And like they all become friends during it. So
yeah,
there was like that weird psychological thing to it.
That's what makes the story. It's like, you could, like, if I wrote that story, it'd be really hard for me just to think like, okay, they're just walking. How do I make this interesting? Because it's like a 337-page book.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you just have guys walking? And it's like, okay, there's going to be some drama because they're getting tired and they're fighting elements and stuff. Like, how do you make that interesting for so long? And every chapter, you just can't stop reading it. And it's because the fucking premise actually isn't about just the walk. Like you said, they become friends. They learn about each other's lives. And then the psychological aspect of, like, I can't even imagine the tension when I get to the final 2 people walking. It's like, one of us is going to die. But even so, like, you have 100 guys and they all go into the competition thinking they're going to win, but knowing that 99 are going to die. Guaranteed going to die. There's no way around it.
And there's no, like, real prize. It's whatever you want.
Yeah.
So then it's also like, what do you wish for? And like, what are the people like walking for?
Exactly. And I don't know the ending. I never even heard of this story or the book until I saw the trailer for the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I never heard of it. So until I saw the trailer for the movie that's coming out in September, why did it take fucking this long to create a movie based on this? They could have did this movie at any time.
Yeah.
The trailer looks really good, by the way. And Mark Hamill's the major.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember hearing about that, but like
Yeah.
you almost like in the first couple seconds of the trailer, you don't realize it's him at first.
Right? Yeah, because he has like a beard and he looks like fucking. I mean, he sounds like Mark Hamill, but which is funny too. Role digression. Mark Hamill sounds like such a fucking wienery femboy in the first Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, he did. He sounded like a whiny bitch.
Yeah.
Like, I never understood why people liked him. But then when I he's the Joker and all this stuff. Like when he got older, he just all of a sudden got a cool voice and he could do voice work and just a better actor, I guess. But anyway, so the story, like, I don't know how it's gonna end, but what I would wish for probably would just be that the fucking long walk is done. Like, hey, no more fucking long walks. Like, get rid of this shit because it's like the whole country just gathers around and watches people die and cheers for them. Like they know they're all gonna die. It's like, what the fuck kind of demented shit is that? But then you look at now, you're like, well, people would definitely be in support of something like that.
Right.
They'd be, well, they signed up for it. They signed up for it. Like whenever some like UFC fighter goes on a rampage, 20 years after their career because they have so much brain damage. And then people are like, well, that's what they signed up for.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so you don't feel bad at all that this person is suffering so much in their life because of you paying to watch them in a death sport, basically.
That would be like one of those things. It's like, oh, if you can walk from wherever to wherever, we'll let you into the country. Like, oh, wait, they all died? Darn it. Just darn it.
Also, I think that in our early 20s, we would have been pretty good at the long walk.
Oh, yeah. We would have been, yeah.
We would have been some competition, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, we have an actual episode for you today that might be a two-parter that goes into next week. So we'll be discussing narrative voice, something that I don't remember if we talked about on air recently, but we talked about off air in the story you're working on. And just like the complexities of narrative voice and mainly our problems with, attacking that aspect of writing. Cause it's like, how do I go about narrative voice? Like, do I sound like just the author? I'm the author and I'm telling you all the stuff happening, or do I have the narrative voice in like the voice of the character? Is it from their perspective? There's a lot of things that go into it that I've never considered too much.
And it's because it completely changes how you tell the story.
Exactly.
And what the story is and the tenses and all that stuff like that.
Well, like I was telling you off air, one of the things I heard recently, which kind of gave me an idea for this episode, was that, and I don't know how true this is, but one of the old rules was the narrative voice must be distinct from any of the characters. Like, it's not supposed to be their voice. But then I said, well, Stephen King does that a lot. Like, a lot of his stories you read, the narrative voice is like in the voice of one of the characters, kind of.
Right.
Like, it's not them doing it's not their perspective necessarily. Like, they're not aware of the omnipotent things that the narrator's aware of, but it's kind of in their voice a lot. So it's almost like dipping into their brain. So I'm interested to see some of these topics we're going to talk about if they touch on it.
He's able to do that weird thing too where like you're not supposed to do a lot but like jump points of view.
Yeah, he jumps in and out. But anyway, we'll get into more of that stuff in a moment, so enjoy the musical interlude. You are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, as always, Spencer, the Montgomery Mushroom Marinator Church.
Just cooking up some mushrooms?
I feel like we're probably going to have more academic listeners on this episode, so I'll keep it PG.
PG.
You're marinating mushrooms. I guess you could do other M things to mushrooms, but not dirty things. In cooking-wise, I'm sure there's other M words.
Mashing?
Mashing. You could mash the mushroom. Mashed mushroom sounds disgusting to me. Ew.
I'm not really a big fan of mushrooms to begin with, so no matter what form they come in, I'm probably not going to approve.
Extra mushy mushrooms. Fucking yuck. I'm hit or miss. Like, I like mushrooms, but canned mushrooms kind of gross me out when they're rubbery. And just like some of the textures and taste of mushrooms sometimes get to me. They have to be in something. Anyway, we're not here to talk about mushrooms unless you're talking about mushrooms, man. The magic variety, man. Maybe that's what you're marinating them in.
Yeah, that would be different.
Magic mushrooms. No, we are talking about narrative voice, Spencer. You want to discuss narrative voice?
Sure.
Okay. In this day and age of streaming TV, movies, and social media video, so many aspiring novels think about their novels solely in terms of dialogue and gestures. That is true. I know I go into novels often, or not just novels, my stories, almost with the perspective of how would a movie viewer, like if this was a movie. So the scenes, I'm almost writing a movie for 'em. We talked about this before, how when you go into your stories often, you kind of go into it in the comic book aspect where you're visualizing the scenes rather than just how it would be written necessarily. So that could be a problem when it comes to narration, I'd imagine. I'm sure we'll find out here. So characters talk, maybe there's some action, they sigh and look at things, they talk some more, and that in their minds comprises a novel. They aren't thinking enough about their narrative voice. I've also read some classic novels that have not had narration, probably modernist novels, but no narration. For instance, that Martin O'Kyan, Crane Achille, The Graveyard Clay, that novel was written in just all dialogue.
Okay.
The whole novel was just dialogue. I told you about this when I read it, from the point of view of dead people in a graveyard underground.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not even dialogue as in quotations that you can follow who's talking. Everybody talks at the same time.
Yeah. You remember but you ended up liking it, didn't you?
It was really fucking good and really, really funny and sardonic and kind of hard to read. There's also another, that was the English version, which was Graveyard Clay. That was the more literal translation. There's also a dirtier translation. I forget the fellow's name. He did Dregs of the Day, which is also a translation of Martin O'Kyan's book, which is Dregs of the Day. I don't know the Irish name of, because Martin O'Kyan only wrote in Irish. This I didn't really care for that as much, and that's because this translator fella, he dirties it up.
Like smutty dirty?
Yeah, like the language, So let's say in The Graveyard Clay, if one of the character was like, oh, that guy's a real, I don't know, knob toucher or something. I think knob's more dirty over there. So, that guy's a fornicator. He would straight up be like, even if that was the Irish version, would translate to fornicator, the guy would be like, they're real fuckers, Like he was trying to dirty it, make it more interesting. But his version is called the Dirty Dust.
Okay.
So you can get 2 English versions of that book. I recommend The Graveyard Clay because I enjoyed it. If you want a more crass read The Dirty Dust. I'm thinking about actually picking that up sometime just to read it, because maybe I'll like it.
Just to see the differences.
Yeah, but I've read that translator's other works of Martin O'Kyan's, and I'm not a big fan of it. Just because I'm like, this feels like, because Irish is a beautiful language, and the translations, they're not always direct. They can't be. Right. But then I'm just like, why are you dirtying it up with this filth, this gutter smut? You know what I mean? We're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about narrative voice, Spencer.
All right, sure.
All right, so a strong narrative voice that carries the heft of the storytelling has become a bit of a misunderstood and lost art. By the way, for those who are interested in checking this out, this is from Nathan Bransford, talking about narrative voice in the year of our Lord 2022.
Yes.
I'm not aware of this Nathan Bransford fellow, but this looks like a really good article. And next week, assuming I feel we need to do a part 2, I have another academic article on the topic that I think covers the same stuff, but just has more examples, maybe like modern, like Neil Gaiman, and stuff like that. He's good at narrative voice.
Yeah,
he's good at a lot of things that he shouldn't be good at, though, as well, like tub stuff. Fucking asshole.
Yard tubs.
I'm never gonna get over that. I want to know what the tub looked like. Was it a claw tub? No,
it probably had to be, right?
Yeah,
like a fancy.
Yeah, I don't like to think about it. So much so that when I'm referring to missing narrative voice when I'm editing novels, sometimes authors don't even know what I'm talking about. All right. I do agree with that. There are a lot of authors, which is one reason I decided to do episodes on this, and maybe 2 episodes, is because a lot of authors don't even know exactly what narrative voice is. They're like, well, there's exposition, and then there's just dialogue in the story. Well, narrative voice is often... Think of Mark Twain telling you a story.
Yeah.
So the way I think about it, it's like, he's not in the novel as a character. But he kind of, like you said off air, Stephen King sometimes makes the narrator like its own character, even though it's not a character in the book.
Right, yeah.
Like you feel like this is, you don't even question who necessarily is telling you the story.
Almost kind of like the crypt keeper.
Yeah.
Kind of like, he's this, like, if the crypt keeper, instead of like being the in and outro guy, was like the guy telling you the story.
And ultimately, this goes back to our old debate of, is it really important who's telling the story? That's kind of lost on contemporary fiction, where in the old days, somebody always had to be telling you the story, whether it's epistolary or like an actual narrator that you know. Like somebody had to be telling you the story for it to make sense to writers back in the day. And then after the modernist movement, people were just like, man, it doesn't matter. Story's a story. Just start right into the action. Nobody gives a fuck. That also goes with attention spans, I think. You know?
Yeah.
We lost a lot of the attention spans here. Narrative voice is more than just a point of view and a vessel describing action. In this post, I'm going to cover what is narrative voice, brother. Making this guy Hulk Hogan, so I don't know him. The different roles a narrative voice plays in storytelling, how to craft a strong narrative voice, and why you must pay attention to your narrative voice. So, what is a narrative voice? I think we kind of covered that, but a narrative voice is the non-dialogue storytelling that communicates description, action, thought process, and context to the reader in a manner that's infused with the anchoring POV's personality. So, I often go into it thinking it's like whenever you see the inner thoughts of a character, unless the character's saying them out loud, that's the narrator, because the character can't show you their brain and you know how it's working, but the narrator can. So do you have all that, Spencer?
Yes.
Ha. It says ha. It says got all that? Ha.
Not huzzah, but ha.
And just ha. Not even an exclamation point, just ha. Like lowercase. Ha. Ah. Don't worry. If that sounds like gobbledygook, Hector Guerrero. I don't think he's dead, but I will say R.I.P. anyway. He's the gobbledygooker.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Don't know much about Hector Guerrero other than he's a legend and they made him the gobbledygooker. We're going to spend the rest of this. All right. We get it, fella. We get it. Let's get into it. If you want to fucking read all this stuff, you can actually go to the website, which is nathanbrand.com. Narrative voice. I just looked up narrative voice and this came up. So, Spencer, the different roles a narrative voice plays in storytelling.
Okay.
Even in dialogue, heavy novels, narrative voice still has a crucial role to play. That's because smushing physical description and context into dialogue invariably feels extremely forced. It does. When was the last time you described a setting or action that was taking place around you when the person you're standing next to wasn't visually impaired? That makes sense. So if we're sitting here and I'm trying to tell you what the couch looks like, that's kind of dumb because you could just look at the couch, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, the couch is gray and has 2 seats. You know what the fucking couch looks like. You're next to me. So that's the narrator's job to describe the couch to the reader. So here's an example. Wow, look at that black cat that's walking across the street toward the house with the broken down porch and the scruffy lawn. Scruffy lawn.
Yeah.
That's clunky.
Yeah.
That's attributed to clunky. So that is a clunky sentence that doesn't make sense in dialogue, but I'm assuming they're going to give a narration here. When was the last time you mentioned the context for how you met your significant other to your significant other? Remember how we met on Match.com and then we went on a date on a cable car? And now we've been doing I've actually fucking seen people write stories where it's like that.
That's crazy.
And they have been published by big companies and have long-standing YA series. Fuck your butts. I guess he doesn't give an example of doing that narration. But narration basically is that without being in dialogue. It doesn't make sense.
I feel like, unless if I'm writing a story that's in like first person, I'm normally using a narrator. Like,
I think you just inherently do. I mean, how do you write a story without having some sort of narration? I mean,
apparently people do, though.
People suck. A lot of people shouldn't be writers. So writers who can't think past dialogue and neglect narrative voice end up concocting wildly convoluted conversational workabouts that are scarcely believable. I like the C's. There's a lot of C's in there. Don't do that. Use the narrative voice. Here are some different roles and plays. Spicing it up. I don't know if it's Cookie Monster or Animal from the Muppets. I'm not sure who that is. That's one of those deep recesses in my brain that just pulls out a dumbass voice that doesn't sound good to anybody. Physical description and action. The narrative voice provides crisp, clear physical description and action that helps anchor the reader in the setting and, better yet, immerses them in the setting. Even if your novel is dialogue heavy, it shouldn't mean no physical description. It might just mean economical physical description. Stupid, I like the word economical. You know why I don't like economical?
Why?
It always follows some gobbledygook. It always makes me think of the economy. Economy of words, though, is one of those things I struggle with, as you know. Should I use a lot of words? Should I use little words? I am thinking about writing at some point a road, Cormac McCarthy's a road type of story that is just very minimal.
Just to see what that would be like.
All $1 words, 50-cent words, Hemingway-esque. I just write a Hemingway story, I guess. Angie rolled her suitcase through the harsh light of Terminal B is some really brief physical description. But I bet you can fully picture that setting without needing an entire page describing every single weary traveler and frazzled gate agent. Some writers, a lot of old French writers, love to have that scene be 3 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
And the setting sun poured through the airport windows and cast her shadow on the backdropped wall like a confiscating butt sex monster. I don't know. I would read that. But context and exposition. Show don't tell is often misunderstood. You know how it's misunderstood?
How?
I don't know. I give up. It's okay to hit pause and simply explain unfamiliar concepts to the reader, such as how the protagonist met their significant other. Unless you're writing something very experimental, the narrative voice is not a stream of conscious transcription of a character's literal thoughts in another time and place. It doesn't have to be oh, that had to go to a fucking different article to get the question answered for the show don't tell is often misunderstood bullshit. No, show don't tell is often misunderstood. I think people, I don't know. I don't know. I want to click on it so bad. No, we're
Haagen Dazs.
It's going to be a whole article. The narrator is storytelling to someone in the reader's place and time is breaking the fourth wall. That means that the narrative voice needs to provide the reader with the information they need to understand. All right, we get it. We fucking get it. The narrator is telling the one telling you the story. It's not that difficult to fucking decide on this
I mean,
thing.
I think that's like when you look up the word narrator, that would come. Like, I think
Narrating.
that's the definition.
The protagonist's thought process is motivation is everything in a novel, and we anchor to what characters want like it's a North Star. The more that's at stake and the more skin the protagonist puts in the game, going after things they want, the more invested we'll be in whether they're going to get it. Even better if we know how it fits into their ultimate hopes and dreams. But in order to grasp those things, we need to know what the protagonist is thinking, how they're contextualizing new information, and how they're evaluating their choices. We should have a sense of why they're doing what they're doing. We've talked about this many, many times. Some omniscient narrative voices will incorporate multiple characters' thoughts, but we absolutely need to know what the protagonist is thinking and what they... Again, it's just their thoughts. You're the one being able to describe their thoughts, as I mentioned. Also, can I tell you something real quick?
Do it.
I wasn't doing the cold open. I completely forgot. So the issue of Chill Magazine I'm in, I have a story in the Dream issue, comes out next week. So as of the recording of this, I think it'll be out. I think May 26th. Yeah, May 26th, because Memorial Day Monday is the launch party.
Oh.
And I was invited to the launch party. And I actually considered going.
Oh, yeah?
It's in Manhattan. But it's only 6.5 hour drive.
Yeah.
But then I looked it up on the map. It's right by Long Island, actually. I looked it up on the map, like the street view.
Not
sketchy.
Not a good place.
It just looks sketchy. I don't know if it's a good place or not, but the area they're having in some store looked kind of sketchy. And that's
So it just look like New York.
Yeah. It seemed like a long drive just to go get robbed and eat some hot dogs.
And then come back.
And come back immediately, yeah. It was cool that I got invited to a launch party.
Yeah,
It's very professional. But I should be getting that issue as of the dropping of this episode. I hope I have it in my hands. But yeah, Chill Magazine, check that out. Also, I don't think we'll have an episode before. So June 1st, you could pre-order the Starlight Pulp Review 6 that I'm in. I'm more excited about that.
Right, yeah.
Because that's a better, longer story. The story I have at Chill Magazine is a weird, shorter story. And I like it. It's just one that was like, it was one I actually didn't have anything to do. Like, I couldn't send it anywhere. I wrote it specifically for a magazine that was putting out a Dream issue, and they didn't want it. Like, they just, it's not a good fit. I was like, okay, well, now what do I do with it? Actually, it was the one that also I submitted to another magazine. I think we talked about it on air. And they gave me this long fucking email about how great it was and all this shit, but then they didn't accept it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do. But that made me think, well, at least that's some promise. If I see another Dream issue come up anywhere, I'll submit. And sure enough, I saw one and they accepted it.
There you go.
It gave me $7,000.
Yeah.
No, they did not.
No.
If they did, I would do more of that and less of anything else in my life. How to craft a strong narrative voice. All right, I'm just going to go right into the weave the POV characters or omniscient voices personality into the narrative. So maybe Stephen King just does that so well that we feel it is the protagonist's voice.
Maybe.
Number 2, give hints of a reality outside of the narrative voice, particularly for non-omniscient point of views. That's a tricky one, I feel, because is the world outside of what's going on important to the reader? If it's like, say, the Hunger Games, maybe, because it's like, okay, well, what's going outside of the Hunger Games? What's going on in this weird dystopian world? Yeah, that's probably important. But if you had, I don't know. Well, okay, like I said, I'm reading The Long Walk. Yeah, they're just on a long walk, but the whole time I'm reading, I'm still thinking like, why the fuck? Like, what is the U.S. like at this point in time in this world? Like, why are they having this?
And it's weird because it seems like dystopian, but like everything else seems normal or like what it is now, except
that long walk.
Yeah,
but it's described in the book as the national pastime.
Right.
So that's their big event, I guess, every year. Is like that's what everyone watches, and it says the billions of dollars are made, like betted on this thing. So they're bet on this thing, and I'm just thinking, like, what's the world like outside of this? What led up to this? You know? So you actually, the narrator being in that world makes me question things. Though the narrator in this book is more or less Ray Garrity, the protagonist.
Yeah.
Like when you're reading it, it's mostly just like it's his thoughts and stuff, but you feel like it's Ray Garrity, which is what that could be a fault in Stephen King's writing as well. Is that there's never, I mean, I can't say never, but in a lot of stuff I've read, there isn't a separation, like a significant gap between the narrator and the protagonist. It's not just their thoughts; it's like you feel like you're reading the protagonist almost, like it's the protagonist narrating to you. That's almost how it always, like that actually in a lot of his books, that's how it feels. The protagonist is narrating to you, and then that kind of makes you think it was like, well, if they die, or it's a little bit odd. So I think that's where the whole distinction between narrator and protagonist is supposed to come in. So you want the narrator to be separate. I get that. So I don't know if that's a slight on Steve. I like it, so I don't really care. But I don't know if that's considered a slight from literary snobs or anything on his writing ability. By the way, narrative voice is not a play-by-play. Yeah. Personality. To craft an engaging voice, it's not just a matter of dispassionately describing some swans and a pond and describing. Okay, there are times where I've read books where the narrator is very dry and it's the worst part of the book.
Yeah.
It's literally just describing what's going on or giving the thoughts of the character, but it has no unique personality of its own. So you read some narration and it's just like, how did I go into like this really well-crafted story where the characters are super engaging and I love the plot, but then once it gets to the narrative bits, I was just like reading like a history book on it or something,
Like Moby Dick?
No, there's a narrative voice in Moby Dick, but the parts of Moby Dick that don't, just whaling shit. But I've read some books though where it's just really, and maybe a lot of them are probably translated, so it could be the translation as well.
True.
Where you're just like, oh Jesus, this is like, it literally feels like you're reading about the book you're reading.
You're just like, well, I want to get back to the story.
Yeah, it's like you're taken out of the story, so you need some personality. So here's an example. Hannibal stood at the edge of the pond and watched 3 pristine swans cavort with graceful ease among colorful lily pads and swaying reeds. Just disgusting. Narrative voice is just disgusting, gives it a little personality. And again, that's where you can confuse the narrative for the protagonist. Is it the protagonist thing is just disgusting? You're supposed to get the hint that the protagonist obviously thinks that the scene is disgusting, but it's still the narrator. It's not the actual protagonist.
And like, if you can, if you're able to work it, because like, I think of like the Dexter books, like the TV show. Like in the TV show, you got to hear his inner monologue. Well, that's how the book is written. It's also they're telling you like what's going on. There's like a narration telling you what's going on, but then we also get Dexter's thoughts, like like they're having a conversation and like he'll saying something, but then you also hear what he's actually like thinking too.
The early seasons of Handmaid's Tale, the protagonist, June Osborne, it would always have her thoughts played out like a monologue, kind of like, so when she's in something, you could get her inner thoughts. And then they shied away from that in the future episode, like the future seasons. And it just like close-ups of gross Elizabeth Moss. That's what they replaced it with. The Elizabeth Moss's close-up face and her just going, like she's taking a shit. And then it's just like, I kind of missed the fucking her thought. It's like, because it's trying to convey the thoughts through her fucking emotional range of constipated or crying. So I don't know. Very boogery. She's always very boogery. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. And another thing that's here's a quick tip. Your narrator should be like when you write a good narrator, write them as if they're a character in the book that's not in the book.
Yeah,
that's how you get a personality with the narrator. A world outside of the point of view. Don't think about narrative voice solely in terms of the protagonist and or omniscient perspective. You also need to find a way to show hints of a more objective reality creeping in. That's a good idea just in general. When you're writing, it's good to step back, whether you include it in the book or not. And sometimes it is good to include in the book because as the reader's not actually in the story, you know? So think about your problems at work. Sure, to you, that might be the end of the world. Say you got a warning that you're going to get fired. See, or, you know, somebody fucked you over at work and you got in big trouble. That could be the end of the world to you. But everyone else around you that's not involved in your work, especially in the real world, I mean, even they might care about you and they don't want bad things to happen to you, or they can understand your frustration. But since it's not happening to them, they don't necessarily care as much.
Right.
They're never going to care as much. You know, everybody cares about themselves more than anybody, whether they say so or not, to a degree, because it's just our instincts as survivalist. So if something happens to you, it's not, you want to, like, as a narrator who's supposed to be an outside perspective, that should step back and show the reader that's like, hey, you know, even though the people in the long walk are all dying, Stephen King does this in the book. He makes a point of talking about a lot of the people watching. It's like, well, they get to go back to their normal lives and they don't actually give a shit. So, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, well, outside of the 100 people in this race and the 99 that are sure to die, for everybody else, it's just a spectacle. It's not a real big deal. So life goes on, essentially. You know, so it goes.
So it goes.
That's what Vonnegut did really good in that book is he showed that in Slaughterhouse 5, he showed that outside of what was happening to Billy Pilgrim, you know, in the war and stuff, like there's still other life. Like there, you know, people have their own problems. Everybody has the things they have to face. So when you take a step back, it's not necessarily as big of a deal as it seems.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like you know, everybody's the hero in their own story.
Yeah.
So, like, if everybody's the main character, in this story. Like, I mean, how many times have we joked around, like, the whenever we went to the Arnold a couple years ago, and we were finding someplace to eat, and there was just like a drunken chick walking down the street, and be like, "Oh man, she got real main character energy."
Yeah,
like,
everybody has the main character energy. Well, you know what? This is actually a good pro mental health tip as well. I do this in my own life. When I'm finding myself getting enraged at work, especially, and I want to punch somebody in the face or scream or fucking quit or whatever it is, I try to take a step back and think outside of my existence, just what's going on, even just in the general area, and be like, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Like there's like ultimately, like what would be the consequences of saying I quit or, you know, I'm not working here anymore? Like, I can get another job, basically. Like, yeah, it seems like the biggest deal in the world to me now. But if I was to, and when I worked at Walmart back in the days, the buggy pushers, that's when it really, that mind frame set in. Because I was just like, this is like the most unfucking important thing.
Right.
Like what I'm doing here. Like I'm just a number. They don't give a fuck about me, the big corporation. So what does it really matter, you know, if I do this or not? I get in trouble. Like I don't actually get in trouble. I'm not going to jail. My life's not ruined.
Yeah, it's work trouble.
Yeah, I'm not going to be destitute. Now there are people in situations where they lose their job. They're done. They're homeless, like so that has added pressure. But if you're in a privileged position where it's like I can take a month off of work even and not, you know, be destitute and homeless and all that shit. So it's like, yeah, things will be harder. But if you step back and look, it's like, what is the importance of what I'm going through now to the actual going-ons of the world? Not that important. And then you can go, well, that's not, you know, not something I should focus so much energy on that it negatively impacts my life. Anyway, so that's basically, you know, show the world outside of you have to be nuanced when you do that as a narrator. You don't want to be like super ham-fisted.
Meanwhile,
in the real world, everybody's making lasagna and fucking hates Mondays.
I was just thinking the old, you know, in the old costume. Meanwhile, in the Justice League Hall, the superhero.
So here's an example they post here. Nathan and Chris stood at the edge of a chasm full of bubbling lava. If Chris didn't make the jump, it would just prove he was a coward. We could totally make this, Nathan said. Chris gave Nathan side eye and tested the cave wall for loose stones. I don't know what's that an example of? Oh, unreliable narrator, I guess. Okay. I don't know. Read it yourself if you want to figure that out. Why you must pay attention to your narrative voice. A narrative voice really and truly is what will make or break your novel. All of the most scintillating dialogue in the world isn't going to overcome a weak or non-existent narrative voice, while a beautiful narrative voice can more than outweigh some pretty generic dialogue. It is not easy to come up with an overall voice that feels unique, and you may find yourself frustrated and feeling like you're imitating someone else when you start writing. And that's the end of that article. Like I said, I think I'm going to make this a two-parter because there's, I think, is a more academic article that breaks it down with like famous examples and stuff. So we'll do that next week. I just thought mainly the topic was interesting. That's why I didn't like read that whole thing word for word. But I thought the topic was interesting because it's one thing. It's like I don't say I struggle with it, but I don't focus enough on it. Like when I'm in the midst of writing, I don't think about narration.
Okay.
Like I'm describing things and I'm moving the story along, and I feel that's probably a weak point in my writing. Is I don't often dip into the character's mind as much as I should.
Okay.
Like I don't feel like I don't show their thoughts the way I probably should. I have to go back and read some of my work because like some of my horror stories I do that and I don't realize I did it.
Well, and also too, like that also goes into like how we talk about like the different like tenses and stuff too, because like if
that's where, by the way, that the next article we're doing next week, that's the tenses and all that shit come into play.
Because again, that changes like if you have it through that character's like mostly just through like one character's point of view. Is it first person? Is it like, you know what I mean? It really, you have to factor all those things in as well.
Yeah. I have one of my Asher Kang, my Ethereal Nightmares Asher Kang story sitting here. I'm going to see if I used, because I know at the beginning is, a lot of setting and stuff. That is one thing I think I do probably too much in my writing is I cement the setting first and foremost a lot of the time. That's why I really started enjoying the pulp stuff I've been doing because I start with fucking action.
Right.
And when I do the setting, I try to do it in a way that it's not going to be boring or anything. But I don't know. I like setting. Just the setting pieces usually get me into a story.
Well, then also too, once you get the setting cemented, it's like you don't have to go back to it as much.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fucking read all this. Yeah, it seems like a lot of times I pepper the narrative voice in with the dialogue, actually. So I do the dialogue and then like the action in between the dialogue and stuff. A lot of that is the narrative voice. When I think of narrative voice, often I always think of these big paragraphs, and that's not correct.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be big paragraphs and stuff. So I would probably, maybe because we're going to work on your story, your one story after we're done here, is maybe when we go through no, you have a lot of narrative voice in there, actually.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, like the whole beginning. Maybe too much. Yeah, you have plenty of narrative voice. So that's one of those things. Like as a writer, especially a contemporary writer who hasn't gone to any kind of writing school or creative writing classes, I don't think about it. Because I was asked before, it's like, how much do you think about like your characters' motivations and what they're going through and stuff? It's like, honestly, I don't. Right. I think about the story, and then when I think about like what the plot is, I go into, okay, well, how is this affecting the characters? And that's what creates their motivations and what they're doing. I don't actually specifically go into it like, oh, my protagonist needs to, go from point A to point Z, and why is he doing that? I don't think of it in those terms. I usually think of like, well, here's the story. What would I do if I was dropped into that situation? Right. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's a different way of going about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I guess a lot of literary writers, they go into it all character first. It's about the character's motivations and inner thoughts and feelings. And it's like, mine come out because of the story. I don't focus on that solely as the story unravels because of that.
Your characters are kind of like bystanders to the story.
Yeah. I think it's
other than being maybe the characters driving the story.
Yeah, like it's weird to me to have a story unfold because of the character's actions. I know that sounds stupid because, well, yeah, the story unfolds because of the character's actions, but I do the opposite. Like a lot of times the story or the characters react to like what's happening to cause the story. So let's say, I don't know, there's a volcano and it decimates a small village. The villagers' reaction to the volcano, like that's what their motivations to survive and how they go about their story. It's not like, oh, the characters in this village were doing about their days and then they know a volcano's coming and, what are they going to do about it? It's like, that's less interesting to me than how they react to the volcano happening already versus like, what is their reaction to the incoming volcano and what they're going to do. And it's like, I don't know. Right. I don't care about that stuff so much. I'm not a literary writer. That's why.
Yeah.
Anyway, folks, we thank you for listening. Next week, we'll discuss this topic further and we'll go more into like I said, the academic side of it. So the tenses and maybe some of the mechanics of writing narrative voice versus just, what makes good narrative voice. If you want to check us out online, we are at DPW Podcasts on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, though we don't post on anything, really.
No.
I post the episodes now. I don't fucking... Social media sucks.
Yeah.
It's just so toxic that I don't even like... Like, if you guys comment on stuff, I'll respond when I see it.
Right.
if you send us ideas or just whatever it is, tag us and stuff. Yeah, that's fine. I'll respond and stuff. Personal interactions I like. It's just like that. Oh, I'm gonna have to market the podcast, and that shit's boring as fuck. I hate it. Nobody cares. I feel like when you're just like promoting shit all the time, people don't.
Well, and I just feel like all that, especially now, all that stuff is just bogged down with everything else that's going on in the world. So it's like, are even people even looking for like a writing podcast to like listen to, or are they more worried about being fucking kidnapped from something?
I feel like the self-serving nature of social media is at complete odds with like the craziness of the world right now, and people just do not give a fuck what's happening in your individual life. When, like you said, ICE might break down the door and take them, even though they're legal citizens, or the economy keeps crashing, or just whatever the fuck it is. But anyway, in another side of the universe, very self-serving, but maybe serving others. Spencer's OnlyFans. He is the Montgomery mushroom marinator, and I'm assuming he is taking those marinated mushrooms to a food kitchen.
Yes,
because that's one thing you can't control, since the government apparently wants nothing to do with charitable causes anymore, and they're not giving money to charities or even FEMA. So hurricanes blowing up everybody. Fuck you. We don't care. So you can personally go out and help. Be a helper, as Mr. Rogers said.
Before that becomes illegal.
You can check out my website while I'm allowed to keep posting stuff before censorship ruins that. CalebJamesK.com. I just been doing my publication history mainly. I need to post more personal things, but I'm at the point now where I don't have the time. But anyway, you can check that out, and we will check you next week with a equally good or better episode, maybe?
We'll see.
Perhaps. We'll see.